All right, guys. So before we even start to talk about the sound and the features of the new $89 Moondrop Golden Ages 2, I want to go ahead and talk about the design and the look of these. Yes, it does have that typical like squared off case that luckily this time does have a lid to actually keep these protected. And this case actually supports Qi wireless charging. Now, the earbuds have that same squared off design, like a lot of the other Moondrop earbuds. It does have a slight hump here, which is actually where they kind of hide the microphones. But I just absolutely love this retro design. It's made to kind of look like an old Walkman that plays cassette tapes. You can see on the top, you can see the play, all of the different functions that you would have on a cassette player. And this was just what I was used to as a kid. I actually used a Walkman. I had cassette tapes when I was much younger. So this kind of just brings back a lot of good memories. And if you actually don't like the design of these, they've even included an actual cover for the case. This is really to keep the case more protected, but it actually kind of hides that design altogether. So it gives it a more simplified look if that's something that you're looking for. On the case, it actually points out some pretty impressive features, one of which is the 13mm circular dual suspension planar magnetic drivers that these have. Now, it also points out that it uses a custom Moondrop SoC or system on chip, which optimizes the performance of these. It makes it where it's more efficient. Now, they do auto switch from mono to stereo if you're going to just be using one earbud at a time or both of them. Now, outside of the features that's not actually listed on the case, these do support Bluetooth 6.0, so it does have multi-point connection. They have LHDC-V, which is an audio transmission that supports lossless audio up to 24-bit at 192 kilohertz, and these also have LDAC support. And if you have a device that supports it, it even has LE audio. And I have it with the Pixel 10 Pro that I use, so it cuts down a lot more lag, and it just makes them more efficient. It makes it where it doesn't use as much power and still able to get really good sound quality out of these. Now, if you don't have a device that supports this, these still have a gaming mode, so you can switch it into that, so it can cut down as much lag as possible. But do know and keep in mind, if you're using a gaming mode or if you're going to use the LDAC mode, it's going to cut into the battery life, which is 8 hours on the earbuds, and the case is going to give you an additional 24 hours, but you're going to get much less if you're using either one of those other modes. Now, they do have an app which has a ton of different EQ options. There's a lot of them they already have pre-built in. You can change the gain mode. You can use different EQ settings that other users have uploaded. There's also a feature in these that is the 3D spatial audio. Now, you know how I feel about this. Normally, I'm not a huge fan, but there's 3 different spatial audio modes you actually get to choose between. There's a fixed mode, which just kind of leaves it exactly like it is. It just adds a little bit more space. There's a 30-degree tilt, which is just giving you a little bit more as far as in the movement side of things. And then there's just full-on head tracking. So when you turn your head, the audio just kind of stays at one source. And, no matter which way you do, it just gives this weird effect. I just do not like this with music, but it is better than most other earbuds that have spatial audio. So it is kind of impressive what they're doing here. But this feature is just really so good with movies and TV shows. It's just not something that I like with music. Now, also within the app, you can switch between the ANC on, the ANC off, and the transparency mode. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say this. The ANC kind of sucks on these. They're not really good at all. And maybe it's just because they're using the feed forward method, where it's just using the mics on the outside to try to blend in with what you're listening to. It's not using the hybrid method where it's using mics on the outside, mics on the inside. And so for me, really the only reason to turn the noise canceling on is because it adds a little bit more boost, just slightly more boost in the low end when you're listening to music. But the transparency mode, though, is very, very good. Everything sounds really natural when it's being pumped in. It's really easy to carry on a conversation. Never feel like you actually have to take these out. Now, if you are going to use these outdoors, I do want to point out that I was not able to find where there's any kind of official IP rating on these. This was the same thing with the original Golden Ages, if I remember correctly. So, you might just want to be careful if you're in your surroundings. I think it's going to be fine against, light splashes, maybe some slight rain. As long as it's not dropped into water and it's not having like direct water being pushed onto the earbuds, I think you're going to be okay. Now, if you are going to use these earbuds for phone calls, each earbud is using dual beamforming mics that also use environmental noise canceling to block out a lot of your surroundings. But you guys can be a judge of how this sounds by listening to a quick test here. So here is a quick mic test outdoors using the Moondrops. Today, it is definitely a windy day. I can even hear the AC unit. I can hear birds. I can hear traffic. So really, this is just to give you an idea of what it would sound like if you were to take a call in public. So now let's talk about the sound. Now, these were tuned to have characteristics that match Moondrop's VDSF target response, which basically means these have a pretty natural sound overall. There is a lot of focus on the clarity and the details, just not so much the bass. Now, if you are a bass head, I'm going to go ahead and say that you're going to feel like these are lacking. It's not bloated. It's not boomy. It doesn't sound like overly pushy when it comes to the low end. It's just more accurate. It's very, very tight when it comes to the bass, which you honestly don't normally see in a lot of earbuds. Now, the mids on these are very pronounced. It sounds a little bit upfront when it comes to vocalists and certain acoustic instruments, but vocalists sound fantastic. There's just something about the characteristics it's bringing out in both male and female vocalists. I was just really impressed with what they were able to do here. Now, the treble on these are very bright. They're very detailed, and it kind of gets like right up to that point of being harsh. It doesn't have that like sibilant sound with the S's. It's nothing like that, but it is still very, very bright. And it feels like everything overall is just really tuned to bring out all the details. It's not really made to overemphasize the low end. Now, I'm not saying that there is no bass in these. It's just trying to take a different approach. It's tightened up. It just feels more accurate. And again, I think if you're a bass head, you're just going to kind of say that these are flat, but they're not really flat at all. It's just a different approach when it comes to the bass. And this kind of goes back to them using the planar magnetic drivers. This is just a characteristic of planars. In my, history of testing out planars, they're not usually a bass heavy sound that they're producing, especially in earbuds. So this kind of fits in line with what I've been used to with planars anyway. And then when it comes to the soundstage and sound imaging, these actually sound pretty wide. It definitely made me feel like I was in a pretty large room, and I never had an issue with being able to tell where different sounds are coming from. And that is just listening to it in the mode as it is, without having to use any of the 3D effect features. So again, I was really impressed here. Now, one thing I did want to point out that I didn't mention earlier, if you use these in LDAC mode, it will eliminate you being able to use any of the different EQ options. So really the only way I was able to kind of boost and bring out bass, give it a little bit more punch than, kind of how it sounded out of the box, was not use it in LDAC mode. And then I went and found, I think it was a user upload that pushed the bass up quite a bit more. And again, it's still not overly aggressive or booming, so do keep that in mind. But if you are somebody that wants to use LDAC, also keep in mind, you really kind of eliminate being able to use all those different EQ options. So my overall opinion is this is the most detailed sounding true wireless earbud that Moondrop makes. And I absolutely love the design of these, but I really do think that the sound signature that these have is kind of refreshing because it is detail focused. It's not made for bass heads. It's not trying to push that low end or give it any kind of bloat. But again, the planars on these are doing something very impressive with the sound. When you mix that with the fact that Moondrop is using their own custom chip on these, you have LDAC playback, you have LE audio, and you're getting all of this for only $89. I think it's very easy to recommend, and it is definitely going to be for people that want a more pure, natural, detailed sound. But guys, that wraps up my video on the new Moondrop Golden Ages 2. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Thank you so much for checking out all the other videos. And as always, make sure to stay tuned for more.